I ended up in the ER thinking I was having a heart attack.
Imagine not being able to open your windows at night because the air outside smells like a porta potty, gives you migraines, and makes your eyes water. Imagine your kids going to a school where the air quality exceeds California health standards for hours at a time. Imagine your beach, the one your community was built around, closed for over 1,300 consecutive days. That's not hypothetical. That's Coronado. That's Imperial Beach. That's San Ysidro. That's my district right here in San Diego. The Tijuana River sewage crisis is one of the most serious environmental disasters in the Western Hemisphere. And for years, nobody in Washington cared, so we made them care. Our congressional delegation secured $650 million in federal investment. We fast-tracked the expansion of the border treatment plant from a 2-year timeline to 100 days. We got Mexico to sign a treaty and commit $93 million to fix its own infrastructure, but we're not done. The river is still one of the most polluted in America. Families are still getting sick, and the work ahead is going to take the same relentless partnership that got us here. I'm Scott Peters. I represent San Diego and Coronado in Congress, and this is 72 and Sunny, where we have conversations that matter about the challenges and opportunities shaping our region and our country. This is our first episode, and if you like what you hear, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcasts. My guest today is Paloma Aguirre, San Diego County Supervisor for District 1, Chair Pro Tempore of the Board of Supervisors, and someone who has long been on the front lines of this fight, longer than almost anyone else in public life. Before she held office, she was a surfer and environmental advocate who experienced firsthand the health impacts of this pollution. Paloma, welcome. Paloma, thanks for coming to talk about this with me. It's, I think, one of the great environmental catastrophes in North America, but it's personal to you. So what was it like? How did you meet it as a person who's in the water surfing and I think you're a competitive boarder also, right?
Yeah. So I grew up in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, where I started surfing, and moved to Imperial Beach, to the San Diego region in 2001, and surfed IB for the better part of 3-4 years before realizing that anytime I went out and the water was brownish, it was sewage rather than your typical stormwater runoff from the tropics. So I realized that because of a guy that was putting up Clean Water Now signs on the sand. And this guy, I wasn't too fond of because sometimes he dropped in on me and he was kind of grumpy. But I was very curious because it had like the red background and a figure of a surfer tagging. And I asked him, what is that? And he said, don't you know you surf the most polluted beach in America? And I said, no, I don't. What do you mean? And he's like, well, you should come and volunteer for us. I am the founder of this organization called Wild Coast.
Oh, that was Serge. Yeah. Serge Dedina.
That was Serge.
Who was your predecessor as mayor, right?
Yes. He's my predecessor and founder of Wild Coast. And that's how I became involved in the issue and learned about the specific challenges that not just Imperial Beach, but the entire South Bay is affected by this pollution, and realized how much of an environmental injustice it is, because Imperial Beach is a working class community, blue collar, coastal community in California, and that's what we're living with.
Right. And actually, I represent Coronado, which you would not call an environmental justice community, but it's the beach for the South Bay, a lot of the beaches for the South Bay, and a lot of people work there in the tourism industry. And when the beaches are closed there's an indirect effect on the same people that you represent. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, Coronado, Imperial Beach are the closest beaches to all the cities in South Bay, and they have been essentially closed for the last 4 straight years, preventing and excluding people from the ability to recreate freely in one of the most amazing natural resources California has to offer.
So about when was this that you and Serge started warning you about the surf?
Yeah, that was like in 2005. I think I had just graduated college. So I began as a volunteer with Wild Coast. I had done environmental volunteering in Mexico, But then I became a part-timer and then worked my way up to program director.
Did you have health effects from it yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Like
yeah.
what did you experience?
Well, the most recent event, and I can get into this later, but the most recent one was chest palpitations and pain. I ended up in the ER thinking I was having a heart attack. And I later found, I wasn't, thankfully, but I later found out that it was potentially related to the hydrogen sulfide exposure that one can present those symptoms. But in the past, I've experienced everything from viral laryngitis to stomach issues to I still have chronic migraines ear infections I've had, skin rashes. A little bit of
also,
everything.
it affects Imperial Beach the most in that way. Also, some communities in San Diego, like the Nestor community, is right.
Yeah. So back then, we understood it to be a beach water quality issue, right? And primarily
and
impacted,
just sewage.
Yeah, and just sewage impacting surfers and swimmers. And okay, well, you can not go into the ocean if you choose to. You can stay out of it if you choose to.
Yeah.
But now, with all the empirical evidence from all the different amazing researchers that are doing work in the valley, in the Tijuana River Valley, now we understand it to be an air quality crisis that impacts primarily the communities most adjacent to the river. So Nestor, San Isidro, South Chula Vista, Otay, Mesa West.
So I don't know if you know, I practiced environmental law for 15 years. I got into this business. One of the reasons I ran for city council was that we had all these sewer spills in San Diego because the city council was refusing to upgrade the sewer system. So in 1999, I think we had 365 sewer spills, coincidentally one per day. And so I thought, I should probably do something about that. So I ran, and that was a simpler fix because we had American infrastructure. We didn't have a border, international border. We ended up upgrading the infrastructure, and in dry days in the summer. Who's our guest here?
This is my daughter, Dasha. I'm sorry.
Dasha, right? Okay. Cool, Dasha. She's getting charged up about sewage. So we pretty much have had clean beaches on summer days, and that's been pretty good. But I found out about this because as a member of Congress, kids from Coronado wrote us these letters that were really very touching and very moving. And we really decided, wow, this isn't just something you hear about. It was something that was affecting their lives. And as we dug deeper, a lot of the businesses in Coronado have, based around tourism, and it was really affecting folks. So it's been something that we wanted to work on. And you mentioned Serge when he was the mayor of Imperial Beach. At one point, he was the only person talking about it to me. And I think one thing that you've done and we've tried to do is really raise the profile of this issue a lot more. And I think it's become something that's on people's mind all over the county. My understanding that one of the reasons it's gotten worse is that the fast growth in Tijuana, they haven't been able to keep up with it. I heard 20% growth in the last 2 decades.
Yep.
And that is astounding, right? That's like, I don't know what San Diego's had in the past few decades, but it's probably low single digits.
Yeah, not comparable. And, it really stems, I think, from something that was intended for good, the NAFTA free trade agreement, right? Yeah. U.S., Canada, Mexico attracted a lot of corporations to Tijuana, a lot of labor from all over Latin America, people looking for jobs, and the infrastructure hasn't kept up with the need.
So we should probably just explain too. First of all, I want to just make a shout out to the Navy SEALs because in my side of the government, that's been a real issue too. We know that some of their training events have had to be moved, but we've also heard anecdotally that a lot of SEALs, people are training, have had these health issues that you described. And we just built, I'm really proud of the close to $1 billion we invested in a new training facility out there on the Stick in Coronado. It's a beautiful facility, but the water's still the same, right? And finally, the Navy spoke up a little bit about it. They were very much trying to be tough and say, well, we'll deal with whatever. Don't worry about it. But finally, we did get them to help us convey to the to Washington that this was an issue for them, and I think that's good too.
I'm very grateful for your efforts in getting them to release that report, because for the longest time, even before I was elected to office, anecdotally, we heard those stories because we're a shared community with the Navy and with people in the military in Imperial Beach. That base you're talking about is literally blocks away from my house.
Right.
So we knew anecdotally they were getting sick. I've met former Navy SEALs that have contracted MRSA infections and really serious illnesses. So to have an official report stating that they are also being affected and that it is impacting potentially national security is incredibly important. Mm-hmm.
We should just also explain a little bit about what kind of pollution we're talking about, because as you were saying, it's not just one thing. So sewage, just people's human waste, right, is not the most toxic thing, except it's in its concentration. Now, the problem with it is it's obviously not meant to go down a river, but it's not as toxic as the chemicals that are coming. Not as toxic on its own as the chemicals that are coming from Mexico, perhaps from manufacturing operations, maybe by American companies. So you have this sewage, which is way overflowed what it's intended, way more than any natural system could handle, including the ocean, which is why the beaches are closed. You've also got this industrial contamination that's coming kind of into the same conveyance, and that's just not something that you can clean up as easily.
And wastewater, sewage, residential waste, it's not as toxic, but it's still concerning too. I just want to emphasize that because
I didn't mean to suggest.
No, I know you didn't, but just for the audience to know, we're being if it was just residential sewage, we would still be exposed to viruses, bacteria, parasites. Right?
E. coli, all that.
E. coli, I mean, you name. And now they're finding. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. But the industrial side of things is also extremely concerning because some of these chemicals, like benzene and other chemicals that are used to dissolve metals, have the ability to become bioaccumulative in the human bodies and carcinogenic over time.
So I didn't mean to say the sewage wasn't. I just said the chemical contamination is a lot harder to deal with.
Yes.
And a lot more dangerous, I think, too.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Saturn Avenue. What is that? People have heard about that. I went out there with you and I think Cory Booker was in town and Juan Vargas.
Thank you for coming.
And I was astounded at the smell. You could just, that you would be able to stand outside in air and smell that. So tell me what is Saturn Avenue and what's the concern about it?
So Saturn Avenue, it's a street that goes over the river. And there are 4 culverts that were placed under the road to help prevent flooding. Right. That road used to flood. It was unusable when the river was flowing at a certain amount. But they put these culverts to prevent flooding to ranchers in other areas of the valley. But those pipes actually had to be raised from the natural ground level, right? So they're causing the river to have a cascade effect. And then they placed riprap or rocks down below, and that is actually creating increased turbulence in the river. Basically, it's churning the waters. They're becoming foamy. They're becoming aerosolized, shooting out into the air, and that's shooting molecules of everything that's in that toxic soup.
This is not just sewage.
No, and the concerning thing, yet again, is this is blocks. It's like 4 blocks away from Berry Elementary, where hundreds of children are going to school every day. Yeah.
So do you know what the contaminants are at Saturn Avenue? Do you know what
they have found, and by they I'm talking about San Diego State University, University of California, San Diego, UC Riverside, and UT Austin have all been down here. UT Austin brought a van that has the ability to perceive up to 1,000 different chemical constituents every hour, and that they had driving around all of IB in South San Diego. So I think thousands of those chemicals have been identified there. What's key is at what levels of concentration are they being found, and those are the analyses that not just UT Austin, but specifically Dr. Kim Prather, who thank you for your support of her lab. She's one of the leading atmospheric chemists in the world. Is running analyses to better understand how much are we being exposed to and what concentrations.
Okay, great. So before we move on to like what's happening and what's next, a little bit more just on what the situation is. What's the economic impact you're seeing from this? I mean, I hear from Coronado, my constituents in Coronado, about lost property values, but also all the businesses that depend on tourism, including Hotel Del. You know, I think are seeing a concern about the reputation of Coronado and the ability of that industry to continue to generate revenues and prosperity and jobs for people all over the county. What are you seeing personally?
Well, anecdotally, that's very much in line with what I've been hearing for years. And I've been actually invited to come to speak to some groups in Coronado, and that has been flagged for me. The property values are falling. The Hotel Del is being affected. You know, I can speak for Imperial Beach. That's been ongoing for years now. I was just walking IB yesterday, the front street of IB and Seacoast Drive, and there's like 2 prime real estate buildings with ocean views and panoramic views of the estuary that are sitting vacant right now. So that's another effort that I've put forward and got unanimous support at the county, is to conduct an economic impact report so that we can go from anecdotal to actual data.
So speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about how we came to this. I'll just tell you my story. One of the things we noticed when Juan Vargas and I came to office in 2013, the amount of money allocated by the federal government for all of border infrastructure, U.S.-Mexico border, was $5 million. I said yesterday to Lee Zeldin, I said, that's about enough to buy a mid-level home in Coronado 1. I mean, it's just not even up to the task at all. So we started working to try to increase that annual appropriation a little bit, but it can only go a little bit at a time. And I think we got it up to $50 or some million, which is not nearly the scale we needed to deal with this. And then in 2017, I don't know if you have an understanding of why this was, but that's when we really started to hear that things were disastrous. I think things started to break in Mexico, and the flows got to be a lot worse, is my theory. And that's kind of what I've heard. And in 2018, 2019, we were starting to talk about the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement. And it became clear that, you know, the federal government had built the South Bay International Wastewater Treatment Plant in the 90s because they had this problem. And it was to process up to 25 million gallons a day of sewage runoff from Mexico, whatever they weren't able to capture and treat. And that seemed to be going fine, but except that it needed to be expanded. So the idea is we needed to double it. And we got word from estimates it would be about $400 million. I have to give credit to Marianne Pintar, my chief of staff, who said to me, why would we approve a agreement with Mexico without dealing with the sewage? And why don't you set up a meeting with, tell Nancy Pelosi you want the money? And so that's what we did. And we did it as a delegation. At that time, it was before Sarah got there. It was Susan Davis, Vargas, Mike Levin, and me. And we said, this is what we want. And so Nancy Pelosi said, that makes sense. She's a good Californian too. And she asked for $400 million. Trump offered zero. And she settled at $300 million. We were on the plane coming back from the COP in Madrid when she told us
I remember hearing about that.
It was great. And so that was finally the kind of the quantity of money that would start to deal with the problem. Since then, we had some hiccups because what we found out from Maria Elena Giner at the IBWC under the Biden administration is that 25 million gallon plant hadn't been kept up. And so it really was a zero plant. And so not only did we have to get it to
where it was
50, we had to get it where it was. So the number was much higher. And we worked really hard as a delegation to get that money. And we did 2 big appropriations efforts under President Biden. He was very supportive. But I will say our delegation and our senators were terrific, including Republicans and Democrats. We still have one Republican in our delegation. Daryl was helpful, and so we got up to $653 million, and we hope that that's enough to deal with that plant. And I think it's a pretty good accomplishment for something that's 3,000 miles away. If it was in the Chesapeake Bay, I think it would have been on people's mind. But and I guess the final shout out I'd give is that the retired Navy SEALs, who are all Republicans in Congress, I think there were 7 of them, they all immediately said, okay, we want to solve that problem, because they had known exactly what was in it. And so they would never have agreed to anything in the $310 million that Joe Biden wanted to do, except they all agreed with that. It was really good, and we got really a lot of help from the Special Ops Caucus, which I co-chair. So that was good. And I think we're going to get that plant done. And I was glad we got the money while Biden was in office, and I think now we were talking about the EPA Administrator Zeldin is personally interested in making it go faster. So we're up at 35, headed to 50, and then Dave Gibson at the Regional Water Quality Control Board, he wants it to go to 60, but it's modular, so we could do that. Anyway, I think that piece of it is going pretty well, but there's a lot more to do. So let's talk about kind of what you think are some of the next steps for, and first of all, if you disagree with that, I just thought I would talk about the federal side.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for your efforts and the delegation's efforts, that first tranche of funding, right? And, shout out to former Commissioner Heener, who, unveiled, I guess, that the plant was in such a dilapidated state. And now we suddenly found ourselves with needing twice as much money to fix it before we expanded it. And to Administrator Zeldin's credit, like the timeline before Heener left was 7 to 10 years. And now that's been expedited and that shortened to
Next year.
2027, next year. Yeah. So this was a collective effort. To your point about the former Navy SEAL Congress members, they've been fantastic. This is obviously at this point, because there's I have very, very clear memories when Serge and I would travel to D.C. back in 2012, advocating for the BWIP funding, the border, and we would get doors shut in the face. Like, no, this. So huge effort. Thank you for that effort. Thank you for what's been done, and it's a good thing what's happening. But I've said this as well, and you and I've talked about this. That plant, our plant, once it's completed and doubled in capacity, is still not addressing what's coming through the river.
Just before we get to that, what's the state of their infrastructure? I mean, obviously it's great to have a treatment plant, but if the pipes are all broken on the way, we kind of pay a price for that. So what's your assessment of that and what they're doing about it? 2
things. So going back to your earlier point about something happening in 2017, there was a boom.
That was the big.
It was a boom of the housing just exploded in Tijuana, and you can visually map it. You can see the towers that just went up overnight, 20, 30-story high buildings. I truly believe, and there's data on this, that a lot of our housing crisis has contributed to people moving to Tijuana, searching for cheaper housing, and that the markets just exploded in Tijuana.
So really you think it was like that much American movement, do you think?
I think it's contributed. I don't think it's entirely that, but it's contributed for sure. Anyway, so all of these buildings and homes and residential zones have been built over a system that's antiquated, dysfunctional, and from the 50s. You have a combined stormwater and sewage infrastructure system where a lot of these pipes are made of clay.
I know.
Clay.
Yeah.
Like,
we had clay pipes. We had clay pipes in San Diego
and I do too.
But we don't now.
They're a headache.
Yeah.
They're a headache, believe me. But so it's like whack-a-mole. You have these great big infrastructure projects like the San Antonio de los Buenos plant, but then, like you said, by the time it gets conveyed to where it needs to go, it can collapse. It rains, it collapses. They're building this big freeway over there, 2-3 stories high. While they're constructing, accidentally break another pipe, and then we get this deluge of 11.5 million gallons of sewage per day like we did a few weeks ago. So it's very challenging.
How much of the problem is that there's not that some obviously there's very poor parts of Tijuana that aren't connected to sewage at all. Is that what like as a quantity? Is that a 30% of the problem or 10% of the problem?
Mexico will tell you that the entire city is 98% connected to sewage. That's the official number. Think tanks have assessed it to be much lower because they're only
What range?
I'm sorry,
60%. Like
I would say so because they're only counting officially incorporated communities, and the problem is the unregulated settlements. You know, where they're not supposed to be an entire community of 30,000 people built over the floodplain of a tributary of the river, and they're all not connected to sewage. That's one. And then on the counter side of that, you have a lot of development residential projects along the coast that pull permits by committing that they're going to have an on-site mini treatment plant.
How does that work?
It doesn't. It works in the beginning, fine, but then as they start selling the condos and it starts filling up, the developer turns around, leaves, and there's no oversight, and they become overwhelmed, and then they start draining into the ocean directly.
First of all, I think Donald Trump is the worst president of my lifetime. He's doing tremendous damage to the country. He's ruining our stature abroad. And if he's going to help me with this problem, I'll still say thank you. And I do think that Zeldin, the administrator, is my former colleague, is personally interested in these timelines. And so I think if he really sees this as part of his own personal accomplishment, his own personal record, that's all to the good. So I do hope that he stays on this as a diplomatic matter to make sure that not just we do our projects on time, but he gets them to do that. Is that you've also met with him? Is that your impression of him?
That was my impression. It was a really good discussion, and he talked about how there's official and unofficial oversight. So that was like, okay, that's good. And you know, they have weekly meetings and they're following up on the timelines, because that's also my concern is I've worked with Mexico. I grew up in Mexico. I am Mexican American, right? I know when folks, you know, sometimes will say something, but in reality it might be a different thing when it comes to some authorities in Mexico. That's been in the past. And so my concern is that they're committing to something that may not be completed, even though they've demonstrated so far that they are committed and they've walked the walk. I still think that we need to look at U.S.-based solutions as a fail-safe strategy.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get to that. But I say I do think that just finally the fact that we're coming up on the renegotiation, the scheduled renegotiation of USMCA, probably gives them a reason to pay attention to this too. And I think there's an understanding that I think the best understanding is that Mexico is our partner. It's our most important trading partner. And for San Diegans, we're two cities, one region. You know, this is really important to us. And the border is a huge economic engine for us too. At the same time, we need to put pressure on our friends so that they do their part. And I think that it's surprising to me how well the balance is being struck right now by this administration. Because if you listen to the odious stuff that comes out of Trump's mouth, you know, maybe it just doesn't seem like it's ruining this relationship in terms of sewage. And I'm glad for that.
Yeah. Surprisingly, right? After so many years.
Yeah. So the path forward, you know, we're still fighting for IBWC funding across the border, or BWIP funding, sorry, border water infrastructure funding across the border. And at the federal level, we're now the money is there for the plant. We're working to make sure that it gets executed. Feels like that's going pretty well. Now we got to talk about new stuff because you got some other ideas. So what more infrastructure would you like to see? Because you've got some ideas about river diversion that I want you to explain. Also, I think we should think about the cleanup. So we should imagine a day, and Zeldin said this too, when there's not sewage flowing through the river all the time, and we can actually clean up that area. And that's so from a federal perspective, that's something I'm starting to think about too, is how do we set the table for that, assuming that everything goes well, and that by the end of next year, like you said, the plant is 50 million gallons a day with surge capacity up to 75, like we planned it. So, like, what do you want to say about what's next for infrastructure?
Well, like I told him yesterday, because we did have that conversation, right? He has concerns regarding remediation of toxicity making it into the soil and sediment, and how that's that's under the purview of EPA, and that's incredibly hard and complicated. But what I said to him is, for me and for my constituents, the first and foremost is we need to address the air quality crisis, because you can choose to avoid the ocean, you can't choose to avoid breathing.
Yeah. By the way, just on that, the people we talked to yesterday, they understand. I think they understand that there's a lot of work and effort being made, but they say, we still every day we're breathing this. So what relief can we bring now?
We need to eliminate the river itself, because at the end of the day, that's what's causing the air crisis.
Yeah, the two big things are what you're going to talk about with the river, but also what Mexico's going to do about water. So go ahead on. Talk about the
okay.
river.
So let's explain why is there a year-round flow in a river that should be seasonal. Let's start there, right? Southern California, rivers don't flow when it doesn't rain.
Right.
But now the Tijuana River has been flowing year-round since, I remember going to the water board in 2008 talking about this.
Yeah.
So
flows recently have been big in dry weather.
Yeah.
Like
40
tens
million.
of thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah, of gallons a day, right? Yeah.
So what's been contributing to those big flows, ironically, are two sewage treatment plants on the east side of Tijuana. Actually, those were built in 2012. So Arturo Herrera and La Morita, state-of-the-art, tertiary level water. They had received even funding from EPA, committing to use that water for irrigation of green spaces throughout Tijuana. The problem is there are not enough green spaces, and there's not enough money for purple pipe infrastructure to convey that recycled
Purple
water.
pipe is when you send, we have some of this in North City where you send partially treated groundwater that's not good for drinking, but you can use it for irrigation. Farming.
Correct.
Right.
So they never were able to set that up. So now they discharge that treated effluent back into the river. The moment it touches it, it becomes polluted again.
So it's treated to high levels. Tertiary level is a high level. Mm-hmm. So you could easily put it in the ocean with no problem.
Yep.
When you put it into the river, it makes it into a river that you don't want to be a river right now. Right.
And something a lot of us have been talking about is there's a lot of desalination projects in Baja California proposed right now, when you have this source of perfectly good water that's being wasted by being thrown into the into the river, and then it becomes a vehicle of pollution for everything else that's falling into the river.
Well, that's interesting. So I hadn't appreciated that. They actually do all this work to make it clean, and then because they don't have a way to deal with it, they just toss it back.
So for years, they've been talking about using that to irrigate or send clean water down to Valle de Guadalupe, which is basically like Napa Valley and Baja, the wine area. They talked about putting a coastal collector and sending it through the coast to provide water down there. There's been all these proposed and great ideas, but none of them have come to fruition.
Okay.
The most recent one has been, let's send this clean water into the Rodriguez Dam, because their water supply is dwindling because...
That's a reservoir.
Yes, it's right across the river way there from the plants. Because their water supply comes from the Colorado River, and as we know, that's dwindling for everybody. Right. So it's a win-win in my opinion, but the fact is they've been talking about that since 2012.
So this is the thing, I think... at the federal level, we want to have some ideas about what to talk about with USMCA. Like, you want us to renew this. By the way, I mean, Trump has to behave better. One of the things he did was impose a bunch of tariffs outside of the USMCA on our best friends, on Mexico and Canada, which, we could talk about housing costs another time, but why are you putting tariffs on drywall from Canada and soft lumber or drywall from Mexico, soft lumber from Canada, when housing costs are already so high? It drives me crazy.
It's shooting ourselves in the foot.
And also it's not you make yourself less credible as a deal person, but assuming that we can get back to a point where we deal with Mexico as a partner, like, we have to deal with their water supply, and what you're talking about is one way to address part of it. But I think we've raised with Zeldin and with the trade representative the notion that Mexico should consider water recycling like we're doing in San Diego, pure water. We're investing a lot in San Diego to avoid sending fresh water that we use into the ocean. We want to treat it and use it.
Of course.
And if Mexico did that too, it would take a lot of pressure off of
Absolutely.
the Colorado River and all of these things that you're talking about. And the alternative they're talking about is desal, which is very expensive.
Energy intensive.
And energy intensive, very expensive.
Bad on the environment.
Yeah, and it's got some consequences that are certainly worse than water recycling. So, just so you know, and I think to the extent you can talk to folks as you talk to them in Mexico, we think that's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I agree, and I brought it up at the last chamber trip, right?
Yeah.
And we've had those discussions, but ultimately, the way I see it, and my mandate and responsibility is to the people that I represent in District 1 that are breathing this day in and day out. All of these conceptual, subjective conversations are not resulting in improvements to their health and lives.
Totally.
So,
And also, we that's one thing I would say, just so we don't lose it. People want relief now.
yes,
And we're talking about
yes.
we're talking about what we're doing in the near term and we're doing long term. But in the near term, people want relief now, and that's
Yes.
important.
And in that vein, what I think we need to do is continue to have these conversations with Mexico, continue to use our leverage tools through the USMCA renegotiation. We're not giving up on that option. It's this option and this option.
Right.
So for me, the contingency strategy is important because otherwise we're entirely dependent on a different country for the well-being of our residents and constituents.
Right. So tell me about the diversion idea that you have. What does it mean to divert a river?
It happens up and down the state, right? Yeah. A lot of rivers are diverted and treated. It's not a technology that's not common. We could do it easily. There's a geographical space in the International Wastewater Treatment Plant has the capacity to be expanded to 100 million gallons if we wanted to. And there's the political will to put the money into it. And if there's the will to put, I don't know how many billions of dollars into ICE, we should be able to put some into wastewater infrastructure.
Protecting our people instead of going after them.
Well, we won't go there, but technically those moderate, medium-sized flows. I'm not talking about wet weather flows because when it rains, that river flows at a monumental level. So medium-sized flows, 10 to 15 to 20 million gallons per day. We can divert it into a different section of the plant, put some pre-treatment, and then send it offshore, 3 miles offshore, where instead of it churning inside the communities of South Bay, it's going out into the ocean with partial treatment, well offshore, and mixing in with the coastal environment out there.
It's aligned. It's sort of what the city of San Diego does with Point Loma.
Yep.
With a 4-mile outfall.
Yep.
And where Scripps has decided that that's health doesn't hurt the environment.
We've been in conversations with the IBWC. They're moving forward. My understanding, they have some funding in it to move forward with that assessment. Even at the county, we're willing to contribute to that process if needed so that we can at least arrive to a clear picture of what that would cost. And look, I think at the local level, and I had this conversation with Administrator Zeldin, is we're not just asking the federal government to completely fund it. We are willing to look at other sources of funding, whether that looks like state or even local.
Yeah. One of the things, actually, one of the bills we passed was a bill to allow other than federal money to come solve this problem. Because if you can imagine, it was against the law to get money from even a nonprofit to help with this. So we did pass that bill.
Thank you for that.
Well, Vargas and I passed that. So just on that, though, I think the way, if you want to do something really expensive like this with the federal government, I think what you have to do is bring them a plan. I think it's appropriate that the federal government will fund it, but they won't have the idea until you bring it to them. So to the extent that you could do the front end work to identify what it is, there's already something in the studies that you talked about that outlines it, but to give us a level of detail that we can use, I think that's really helpful. And we can try to upfront that money, but the real challenge is going to be, again, can we get to stroke a check for $1 billion again?
I want to make sure that we are helpful and active partners moving forward, because this, not to sound kumbaya, but it really takes local, state, federal, and Mexico. Yeah,
It takes everybody.
it does.
It takes everybody. And we and you need more friends than enemies. Like the thing is, like we've not come across people who are against doing this, which is really good. And some people are less, they understand it less, but this is really, we built a lot of people who are interested in this and made it a politically popular thing to work on. As we were talking about before, I think that's good. So
It's the right thing to do.
it's the right thing to do. And I said it'll make a big difference for people too, really. Yeah. If people want to know more about this, I mean, we've tried to explain kind of where we understand it to be. For me, my website is scottpeters.house.gov. And everybody in my office knows that this is priority one for us. What about you? How can people get in touch with you and weigh in on this?
Folks can get in touch with me at Supervisor PalomaAguirre.com. We have tons of different platforms. We have YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We put out a lot of educational videos, but also we have a newsletter that people can sign up for. We do once a week. People can get updates on what we've been working on.
Well, I have a newsletter too. Thanks for saying that too.
Okay.
So sign up. So anyway, thanks for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
Thank you. You've been such an amazing leader and partner on all of this. So I really appreciate our partnership.
Yeah. It's important.
It's important for our kiddos, for our elderly, for our families.
Yeah, for everybody. So, well, let's. I don't know when we get to celebrate, but we should, maybe
Hopefully
20.
Now we're like white haired. Like
Administrator Zeldin has promised us 100% solution. So
I'm going to hold him to
he's
that.
only in office for 3 more years. So
Yeah,
that would be a good time.
that would be a good time.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paloma. You've been on the front lines of this fight longer than most people in public life, and this conversation was a reminder of why that matters. Here's what I hope you're taking away from this. First, this is one of the most serious environmental disasters in the Western Hemisphere, and it's happening right here in San Diego. Families in Coronado, Imperial Beach, San Ysidro, and South Chula Vista have been breathing toxic air and swimming in contaminated water for years. Children are going to schools where hydrogen sulfide exceeds health standards. This is an environmental justice crisis, and it demands the urgency we'd give it if it were happening anywhere else. Second, we fought for this, and we're winning. Our congressional delegation, working with local mayors, county supervisors, scientists, the Navy SEAL community, the Chamber of Commerce, and Governor Newsom, secured $650 million in federal investment. We fast-tracked the plant expansion. We got Mexico to the table with a treaty and a $93 million commitment. We did it across party lines. The original USMCA funding was a deal between Trump and Pelosi, and the current expansion is moving under the Trump EPA. Third, we're not done. The full expansion to 50 million gallons a day has to be completed on time. Long-term maintenance funding has to be protected. Mexico has to meet its obligations, and the communities that have carried this burden for decades deserve a full health reckoning, an epidemiological study, remediation, and accountability. If this conversation moved you, tell your representative, whatever their party and whatever their office, that cross-border environmental infrastructure matters. Tell them the IBWC needs reliable funding. Tell them the people in our region deserve the same clean air and clean water as every other community in America. To learn more about what the county's doing, visit supervisorpalomaaguirre.com. And if you live in the affected area, the county's environmental dashboard at tjdashboard.netify.app tracks the hydrogen sulfide levels in beach closures in real time. A California 50 constituent asked, what are you doing to address growing concerns about ICE, DHS, and their blatant use of force? Boy, it's been on our mind a lot. And what happened in the big, beautiful bill that Trump and the Republicans passed in 2025 was they funded Department of Homeland Security and ICE to a level higher than many militaries around the world. They get more money than the United States Marines. They get more money than the entire military of Israel. And we didn't know it then, but the point was to turn those people against us. They passed a bill called the Laken Riley Act. Laken Riley was tragically killed by an immigrant, but of course they blame all immigrants for this horrible crime. And what they did was they made it easier for us for ICE to go after people not convicted of crimes, but people accused of crimes and even misdemeanors, that those would be the targets. And now they've expanded targets well beyond what Trump said, which was dangerous criminals and closing the border and getting rid of dangerous criminals. So they're out of control. They're way overfunded, and that needs to be cut back. So what are we doing? A few things is one, we're going to use whatever leverage we can to pull back on those resources. The appropriations process, the regular budgeting, doesn't affect what was in that big, beautiful bill. So we're really behind the eight ball because our annual appropriations, even if we vote no, doesn't affect ICE. I also introduced a bill that's got tremendous support from across our caucus called the Stop Excessive Force in Immigration Act, which would require ICE and Border Patrol, when they're in our cities, to act like regular cops, like sheriffs or like state troopers. No masks. They don't wear masks. They were always on body cameras. They learned how to de-escalate conflict. They learned proportionate force. You respond to a force with a proportionate response. You don't kill someone for driving away in her car like Renee Good was killed. You don't kill someone for brandishing a cell phone like Alex Preddy. Look, this is something it's going to be a very difficult thing for us to deal with because the funding that the Republicans gave them is basically permanent. But we're encouraging people to be out in the streets, make sure that you have your eyes on ICE, because we will provide repercussions for people who commit murder. We saw this a little bit in San Diego at Bona Forqueta. 20 armed agents, fully with machine guns, labeled up as ICE, go into a small restaurant in South Park. You'd have thought they were going after a drug kingpin. No, they were going after four men who were dishwashers and busboys, making our communities way less safe. It's outrageous, and it's got to stop. A constituent asks, what is Congress doing to allow more residential projects and provide an opportunity for affordable multifamily complexes? Well, I think the cost of housing is the biggest obstacle to the continued prosperity of the Golden State and of San Diego. We have reached a point where it's just about impossible for a young person to buy a house and to start to generate wealth, start a family, start a business, all the things that you should expect to be able to do as an American when you're young. And a lot of that is just because we haven't kept up the housing supply with the demand that for housing that comes from job growth here in San Diego. So we have a healthy economy, but housing is lagging behind. Most of those decisions are made at the local level. So please engage with your council members and your county supervisors and let them know you believe that more housing is important. At the federal level, there's a few things we can do. One is we can leverage federal funding. I've got a bill called Build More Housing Near Transit that would say, if you want us to fund your big, expensive transit project, like the train extension we built, the trolley extension we built, the Midcoast line here in San Diego, it was $1 billion of federal money, $1 billion of local money. But before we give you that federal money, you tell us what you're going to build and that you're going to build housing there so that there really are people getting out of their cars and into transit with that federal money. That's one, leverage federal money. Two is we can re-regulate. We have a regulation that requires manufactured housing to have a chassis so that you can move it on like it's a trailer. We've heard from manufacturers that doesn't make any sense and that's preventing the generation of manufactured housing. We should get rid of that. Third is sometimes we override local governments. I have a bill called Faith in Housing Act that, as a matter of the exercise of religion, some churches, mosques, and synagogues want to build housing to serve their to fulfill their mission. We should get out of the way and keep local governments from preventing housing on church parking lots. Those are some of the ideas that we have. We also set building codes that are more housing friendly, maybe one staircase instead of two, where it's safe. We're looking for all kinds of ideas to make sure that we encourage local governments to do the right thing and build more housing, particularly here in San Diego. I'm Scott Peters. This is 72 and Sunny, and I'll see you next time.